Hello, everyone. This is Jerry from Fight Commentary Chats, and this is Victor Rodriguez, who's a writer for Bloody Elbow. So, Victor, welcome.
Thank you. I'm honored actually to be here. We've corresponded a lot. I've used a lot of your work and praised it for so long. I think it's as well as we've gotten along behind the scenes. I thought this was only not just fair, but really overdue. And I'm super happy to be here, man. Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely, Victor. And I guess that's a perfect segue. Do you remember the first video of mine that you saw?
Oh man, here's the thing. I don't remember exactly which one it was, but I know it was a couple of years ago. So when somewhere in the Bloody Elbow chat, someone had proposed. So here's what happens, right? I mean, among other things, I do a little bit of everything in some cases, and um, one of the things that I've mostly been doing as of late, well, there are two things, right? Which is the WTF, which we're going to get to in a bit, and then there's the more comical thing, the little thing we used to call we had an analysis piece called Judo Chop, right? It was lovingly named too. If those of you who are too young to remember Austin Powers, it was the mockery of the whole Judo Chop thing. Judo Chop. But it was serious analysis breaking down techniques that happened during fights. And then from there, we spawned off the Judo Chump, which was a comedic look at bad street fights. And somehow it just fell onto me. I'm not sure how that started. I don't know why it's sort of coming like, just find any crazy fight that's going viral and they toss it my way. I'm like, yeah, I think I can do something with that. So then we chop it up and we make something happen with it. So that's that's kind of one of the things that I've been largely doing as of late. And I feel like I've strayed away from your original question.
Oh, that's actually perfect. So, probably somewhere from Judo Chop to Judo Chump, some
Yeah.
videos of mine were shared in the
Yes.
forum, which
Right.
then kind of
Right.
got you to find out about the
Yeah.
channel.
Every year and a half, every 18, 20 months, these videos resurface of the iron crotch. Okay. Now, for those not familiar, these are these monks out in different parts of China where these dudes stand up, right? They stand in like, what's known mostly more widely in America as the karate horse stance. And they just get kicked in the balls, right? Repeatedly. And they just stand there and they take it and they take it and they take it. And then because they can't leave it alone, right? You got to raise the stakes. And then they bring in like a battering ram and boom, right to the nuts. And they hit him with a sledgehammer. And the dude's just standing there firm. I don't know if it was one of those. I don't know if it was one of the maybe it might have been in the controversy surrounding MMA versus traditional martial arts in China. I know it had to be one of those two, and I'm leaning more towards the latter. But I'm for some reason I'm really strongly feeling like there is a chance it might have been one of those either Iron Crotch or something along those lines of like, what is this goofy nonsense? Why is this happening? So it had to be either of the two. But I know it was ages ago. So then I recognized I'm like, oh no, I remember this guy. Yeah, no, he does some great stuff. But I'd sort of fallen off the wagon. I didn't really follow you. Like I'd see some of your stuff when it popped up, and then this happened. So now last year we came up with the idea of having a weekly feature that was then known as What the Fight, WTF. It was the brainchild of Tim Bissel largely, and big shout out to him. He is just an absolute, when I tell you about like a true gem of a man, I mean that guy is he is the coolest. And he largely came up with the concept. He gave it the name. He had the idea for me to be the one to do it, and so now I've been doing that every week. And I don't think I maybe there's been, because it's only been around since I want to say October, November. There's only maybe been one or two posts where I haven't featured something that you've done. I kind of like starting off with your stuff and setting the tone from there, because it just feels like the main gist of it is we cover mixed martial arts, we cover combat sports at large, with a central focus at mixed martial arts, right? But we do also cover things that are tangentially related, such as competitive grappling, professional grappling, uh, kickboxing, boxing. We do take elements of that without going into deeper dives unless there's a major massive event, for example, a large Canelo pay-per-view. Well, we're going to be sprinkling some greater coverage of that, not just because of the fact that it attracts more readership, because that is, from a business perspective, what we do aim and strive to do. But you're also looking at the fact that this is something that readers gravitate to, and it is directly related to mixed martial arts because it's something that Mixed martial arts fighters, they train in boxing, they train in competitive grappling, and we see them doing things like that. Some of them come in from the kickboxing world. Israel Adesanya, for example, his training partner, who's making his UFC debut this weekend. All of these things are connected through threads that may not be immediately apparent to a lot of people, but that's kind of what I decided to focus on. And then I decided to get a little crazier with it, including things like Lethwei and sumo. I mean, obviously Sambo is directly related with MMA, so that's a little easier. But then, doing some of the amateurish, I'm not even sure what to call them, but there's an organization called Strelka that's based primarily out of Russia. And they take randos, and if you've been around, if you've really been an OG, if you've been around since 2012, 2013, you've seen an organization called Arrows, where guys fight in MMA in a makeshift ring in sand. And these guys are not guys that are affiliated with major gyms. They're not guys that have professional aspirations on a high level. They just go in there and fight for like $12 and a hot dog. It's nuts. And so, yeah, I do feature a bit of that because some of those are actually pretty damn fun and nice. And like, damn, they're demonstrating some slick technique. The bar for even a fight you'd find on like worldstar.com, the bar for actual knowledge in both in anatomy and technique, it's elevated to a degree that I didn't anticipate. And I do think that a lot of the shifts within martial arts, primarily how mixed martial arts has affected the mainstream as it's bled in, has been a major part of it. So I enjoy doing some of that stuff. And that's kind of where WTF has begun. I don't know if it is to become something else. I try to make it as fun as possible. I throw in obscure references and kind of much like my son who's only 6, the kids get to this, and this is like serious dad talk alert, dad talk, but the flashing word, dad talk. Kids are always at every stage of their progression, they're going to be testing the boundaries. They're going to be flexing to see what you're going to let them get away with. They start talking like fairly recently. I've had to use the term I never thought I'd have to use. I'm not one of your little friends, because sometimes the way that a child will talk to you, is going to be like, let me see if this thing that I saw over there is going to work over here, and you got to shut that down. Well, I'm seeing what I can get away with and what I can actually say, and so far I'm getting away with a whole hell of a lot. I don't think there's any way to slam the piano cover onto my fingers and make me stop at the keyboard when I'm actually doing any of this stuff. And it's fun. I mean, it's just, I try to have as much fun as possible. I only hope that the people reading have as much fun as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a perfect little segue to talk about your journey, right? Because the first thing, when you started talking about your son, I was going to ask if he trains in martial arts. So I guess we could ask that first. Does your son train in martial arts? And when did you start training in martial arts?
Okay, he hasn't started yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave it some serious thought and consideration. And then the world happened, shut everything down. And I'm like, yeah, even right now, I'm really concerned with going back. Training pods were implemented, smaller groups, people having steady, like my schedule isn't as steady for me to have participated in that. And I am still worried because if you look at still how stats and numbers are affected, hospitalization rates, things of that nature. I mean, just at my kid's school, I'm looking at how these numbers are, going up and up. And some of the kids in his class have had infections as well. So, I would feel I grew up Catholic, so that guilt sticks with you. Like if I brought this bug home and spread it somewhere, like I would be devastated if being reckless would either get my son or my wife sick, and I don't want that. So he's not there yet. I'm not certain, and I've given some thought to the possibility of maybe getting him into boxing first. I stopped doing jiu-jitsu in the meantime, and it's been a little painful. I mean, I miss it more than anything. It's the only like main social outlet that I have where I'm able to engage with other people and just like these people are my friends and they know me to a degree better than a lot of other people because and for folks who don't train, maybe it's a little more difficult. I remember a stand-up comedian back in the 90s was making a joke about how absurd it was that boxers would spend all this time beating the shit out of each other and then they'd hug at the end. But here's the thing, man, there's something you learn about this person. There's something you learn within that moment of conflict where you realize something about their personality. There's a bond that's formed. Yeah, there's a respect that is earned and given, and that is a thing that I miss that. You know, there's people, I have friends on Facebook, people that I've trained with. There's at least three people I don't remember having more than three conversations with. But you know, both with what they see that we have in common with the people that we have in common and the comments that are made and the things that are shared and the dynamics that we have in the gym, you understand each other a little more. And you're okay, you know, this is a person that digs deep, is honest about it. Like he didn't just concede this here, or you know, we could have restarted there, but they decided to continue here because you know they didn't want to get an advantage. There's a very there's a very strong personality element that's there. And I just I don't know, man. These are relationships that you've formed over years, and I've had the misfortune of having to take extended breaks from training for a period of time. So I'm still stuck at blue belt, despite having started ages ago. I mean, I realistically I should be a black belt by now, but you know that's just life. As far as him training, yeah, I don't really know right now. I do think that there is something about easing him in with striking more so that he understands the elements of not having to fight elsewhere. That he understands that this is sport, that he understands that this conflict is to be maintained and kept here as an outlet for here. There is a sporting aspect to it. This is not an outlet for you to take out your aggression, but rather a way for you to channel and focus energy in general and to learn and to appreciate what you can do, something that'll build determination and that is simple enough to pick up. I would like eventually to get him into jujitsu. I do think that that would be, or at least start him off with judo. I mean, kids can take the grind of judo a lot easier. Um, I do think that perhaps jujitsu might be the way because this way I would be there with him. I can provide him with proper guidance. You know, this is how, because it is complex when you have no knowledge whatsoever. I mean, I started 2008, and if you start jujitsu, if anyone who started in the last 5 years, you don't realize how fortunate you are to have a plethora of resources, of advice, of people that can put their hand on your shoulder and say, son, you fucked up, but here's how you can get out of it. You know, it happens. And you find yourself imparting some of that as well. Like there's this older cat. Uh, this was like, I mean, I want to say about a year before, like what, 2018 maybe. I saw him get tapped with the triangle like 3 times in a row. And as soon as the bell rung and the round was over, I'm like, come here. And he's like, oh God, like he's gonna put me through the ringer too. You know, like I was gonna invite him to a round. I'm like, no. Show me your triangle. Put me in a triangle. And I showed him how I stay alive, how I sort of work my way out of it. If I can do that for this grown man, I'm pretty sure that I can also help my son in some capacity, right? Look, this isn't always going to save your ass, but you can bail your way out of here. Work slowly, have patience, have that, keep that drive. That's the sort of thing that I feel is very important. And those are life lessons as well that in formative years can be crucial. So I want to get him into something, maybe both. I don't know, but I really feel like some of this outside got to get sorted out first.
And it's funny what you said earlier about how you've been training a long time and you should have a higher belt. I think that's a common thing in jiu-jitsu. Just because jiu-jitsu guys, there's very few McDojos and people really care about becoming proficient at it. So
Yeah.
I've heard many stories of 10-year blue belts, or one of the guys I work with, he's probably like a 15-year or 18-year brown belt. So he's another guy that should be a black belt, but he just never got his black belt, but he rolls with black belts well, but he's a brown belt. So yeah,
Yeah.
two perfect examples of that. And I think it's so funny because jiu-jitsu is probably one of the only martial arts where people aren't at a rush really to get belted, because the mat speaks for itself. You don't need to use your belt to show off. It's not like some of these other martial arts that I won't name where you could have a black belt in a year, 2 years. How'd you do that? Black belt means you're like sensei level. Are you sure you can really teach people after a year of training whatever martial art?
Yeah, there's a level of both mastery and craft that it's supposed to exemplify, but yet at the same time, I don't know that that's really, you know, we then you bring in the business aspect, right? I mean, if you remember these the stories, and I'm sure you've heard them too, where like you go to a certain dojo, You pay the 3 to 5 grand up front, and you'll get your black belt in a year and a half, 2 years. Like, regardless of how often you show up, regardless of uh, what kind of drills you do, you'll just get your black belt. I mean, what are they only teaching the same 5 things? Is this what exactly is being taught? I don't know. But at least like with jiu-jitsu, what I've learned is I've seen guys that have trained 20 years before they get their black belt. I don't have a rush. I'd like to. I think that would be perhaps one of the strongest achievements really there. And I know this is going to sound sappy and corny. I'm not going to lie to you though. The proudest thing that I could possibly be is just being a good dad. And I mean, I'm working on that. I think I'm doing fairly well. I mean, I'm, and much like the work is shown on the mat in jiu-jitsu, the work is shown in the kid. You see the way he is, and then how he goes. Again, dad talk alert. But the main point that I'm getting at is I don't really feel like any sort of stress with that. Although I do, I have this thing where for me to learn and progress, I don't necessarily need constant praise, but it would be nice for me I just like knowing where I stand. Am I doing okay? And if I don't have that, I gotta look. I went from white to blue with no stripes. That was a lot of stress because I'm like, well, am I even close to getting better? Like, what indicators are there for this? But then you wonder, well, what is better exactly? What is it that the instructors, what criteria is there? And when I was finally approached and told that I was getting my blue belt, I was like, are they sure? Like, do I really deserve it? Because I'm getting thumped all so often. I'm like, hey, asshole, you got a third and fourth degree black belt telling you, yes, you're ready. You're going to sit there and question them? Yeah, so you got to have that same self check every now and again. And that goes for any sort of training and any sort of discipline. And that happens a lot in things that extend way past training for combat arts at all.
Yeah. It's so funny when you talk about it's almost like if you really take the time to learn and challenge yourself and keep getting feedback, inevitably when you reach a level, you almost have a little bit of imposter syndrome for a little bit, right? But that's what gets you to keep learning, keep brushing up on your skills. And I think that's kind of my journey with fight commentary breakdowns too. Like when first everyone started coming to my channel because no one else could really translate and cover the stuff in China as well as I did. I will be honest, I felt like, oh my God, ooh, am I ready for this? But then I was like, okay, well, I'll just keep learning Chinese at a high level. I'll just, keep digging my good SEO skills, keep finding the stuff that people can't find. So I got better at finding crazy stuff from China. So, that's my way of dealing with imposter syndrome. But just like when you got your blue belt, when my channel started growing, I definitely was like, oh my God, I don't know. It's kind of the same thing, same analogy.
But look at you now. I mean, you do excellent work. And I'm gonna tell you something. I don't think I've told too many people this. Right before I got my blue belt, I literally was in the shower and I'm like, should I quit? Like, I'm not getting any better. I'm not doing like people tell you you're doing better, but you don't feel like you're doing better. Like maybe you're not looking at what it is that you're improving, but they're seeing. And maybe that's something that's I don't know if maybe you had a similar situation in which perhaps you didn't realize immediately what it is that was drawing people in, but you just kept going at it and it just grew and expanded like that. And, one of the things I appreciate is that you have a knack. It's one thing, look, anybody, you can find anybody, well, not maybe anybody, but you can find a whole swaths of people that can translate what is being said and what's being, written. That's not the same as providing proper context, primarily as it pertains to elements of culture, both in the country that this content is coming from, and as well as from the martial art itself, right? Because there are different schools of thought within folks that train in Kung Fu, for example, whereas, maybe you have some dude from a Southern style, they might just have a different philosophy entirely, not just from someone who has a Northern style, but from someone who's just right across town. These things may seem minuscule to a lot of folks, but that is massive. I remember, and I quote the guy all the time because he's one of the most underrated thinkers I feel in modern times. But Anthony Bourdain would say, that one lifetime is not enough to see all of and to fully understand and comprehend China. And he constantly kept, it was just a point of both fascination and it seemed to me like a point of frustration with him, because it was one of those things like, God, I want to see more, but I'm never going to see and understand it all. I want to really let it sink in. That stuff, it bleeds into martial arts as well. And it's only changing and getting weirder. It's only getting bigger because now you've got the influx, both with mixed martial arts and, making inroads in the country, but then the exports that are coming from China and how the bar has been raised significantly in less than 10 years. You've got a UFC champion. Well, at least not now, but you did. And then you've got a couple of others a couple of sharks, man, they're coming up and they're making waves. And it's interesting. It's really, it's a point of fascination for me now.
Yeah, absolutely. And even beyond China, I remember there was this. Oh, this is hilarious. I gotta send this to you in the future when I find it. But there's a lot of bullshido in India. But
Oh
the
my
funny thing is,
God.
India tries sometimes to kind of promote MMA. There was actually a fight night. I don't know if you guys covered this back in the day. It was like an MMA, but amateur MMA fight night. It was India versus Pakistan. They did
Yeah,
like
I
an
think you
Indian
did.
fighters versus Pakistan fighters, kind of like MMA event. And
Yeah.
so, they're trying too. A lot of these countries known for bullshido, like China and India, they're really trying to promote some of these legit fighting arts more.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, with China, it's much more complicated because you've got it's such a. I mean, there's roadmaps for you to see and understand the legitimacy and the heritage and the way that things have grown and evolved from ancient times until now. India's a little more murky. I mean, there are accounts of forms of kung fu that may have originated and started there. They definitely did have their own martial arts that started there. If you look at some of the crazy weapons, like the multi whip, that's actually a bunch of blades. You ever see that one? I mean, this isn't like the Soul Calibur Ivy Valentine whip. It's a sword blade thing. Like, no, 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 no. This is like 6 or 7 tails that come at you. Like, it's absurd. These are things you can't train with against another person because someone's going to end up losing fingers, or worse. Um, but India has a very fractured thing, and it's got to do with the fact that, much like China, there wasn't China didn't have the same kind of government support. Um, we have still some of the problems that existed in which uh, Chinese martial arts masters were much more reticent, more so than they are now, um, and much more adamant to have anything to do with it because it's like this is an attack on our culture and our way of life. Whereas in India, it was more like the training was disjointed and the infrastructure just wasn't there. It always comes back to that one word. It is infrastructure because much like people would like the knock on Japanese fighters in the mid aughts was what it was that they'd go to a boxing gym and then they go to a jiu-jitsu gym, then they go to a wrestling gym. It's really hard to make any progress with that. But now, you do have full on MMA gyms and they do amazing work. You look at the caliber of the way these guys, I challenge anyone, watch any Pancrase event from start to finish and tell me that that's not some quality stuff. Even the guys that are coming in 4-9, taking on a dude who's 10-3, the guy who's 4-9 might win. Now, there's a couple of different reasons for that. But what I'm trying to get at is that even that guy who's 4-9, his record is ugly as sin. Those dudes can fight. Those dudes are good. They've consolidated things to a degree where now it's very different. India doesn't have that. They've made attempts, but I don't know where the gatekeeping begins and ends. I don't know if it's the fact that it isn't accessible due to training costs. I don't know if it's a matter of athletes, just the life of an athlete. Can you work a job and have enough to train and to eat and to recover and to have the proper therapy to advance? Um, I said this a number of years ago, but it seemed to me like the big Indian MMA superstar is someone that I don't envy. The first one of those guys is going to be, there's going to be so much pressure and so many expectations on their shoulders. And it probably won't be someone who lives full time in India because it's going to likely be someone who is of Indian descent and lives in the UK or in Canada or in the US because these are places that do have that infrastructure and they do have communities. The diaspora is still there, sure, but um, it's just not it's not the same. You at least have a foundation that you can build upon with pre-existing sets at a high level. Arjan Bulan, for example, who was with the UFC, he's now with One Championship. I think he's still with them. Um, High level wrestler, trained at American Kickboxing Academy for a spell. I mean, it's like, could he have accomplished this in India? I don't know. I really don't know. I can't say for sure that he could. I'm leaning towards no. And I'm using as evidence and using past as prologue what other fighters have come of note from there. You know, now we got Ritu Fugat, who also fights for one championship. I mean, yeah, what's her ceiling? You know, what is her training environment like? But then you look at the dozens of Indian fighters that have been through there. Where's their champion? Where's any of those guys who's even sniffed fighting for a belt or even being in a conversation for being in the top 5 or top 10? I don't know. And that's one championship, which is largely focused on that side of the world, right? Which is largely focused on the East. Imagine something like, for example, a Bellator or Cage Warriors or EFC in South Africa. You don't see it. And there's just many questions as to why, but it really just comes down to that. It's the same reason you don't see too many, I don't know, fighters from Nigeria. You know, like there's just it's a country that has a lot of combat sport tradition, but is it focused towards this? Is it geared in this direction? I don't know. And that's India is a lot trickier because it's lucrative. It is a place where you can make a ton of money, but you got to cater to their appetites. You got to shape it in a way that they would be that they'd be able to do it. And creating, or I don't know, you can create a star necessarily, but finding that diamond in the rough and making them that guy who can represent India on that level, that's going to be a major challenge. And again, that person's going to have so much pressure. So, you know, I hope whoever it is, I hope they're ready.
Yeah. And even just speaking with the few MMA fighter audiences that I have in India, it seems like you said, the infrastructure is not there. I mean, I think a few of my viewers who are MMA fighters, so to speak, they don't even have they don't even know where to find students. Just like you said, the infrastructure's not there. Whether they don't have the gym space or they don't have any kind of interest. One viewer actually sent me a video back in the day where some Bullshido guy challenged him and he beat the guy with one kick. And after it came on my channel, I had to private the video because he got reported to his local like martial arts association. So that's why, for those of you wondering what happened to that video, it's members only on my channel. It was going viral and then I had to private it because he was going to get in trouble. Like, that's an example of infrastructure slash culture slash just everything not being there.
I had no, okay, it was like I was aware, and I can't remember the guy's name right now, but he wrote a great thing about this, the history, the more recent history of MMA in India, and how basically you got to wait for some dude with like a ton of money who's willing to throw enough good money after bad to lose and money, just sink his investment into these shows, not make much of a return. The fighters don't make much money. The judges may be corrupt. The association that's overseeing this may not be stable. And then India is a country that's got, I think it's still on that level, right? It's like 3 times the population and 1/3 the size. So we got a lot of hands mixed in. A lot of people want to see this. A lot of people kind of, you know, is it enough of an audience that you can really build upon? I don't know. How do you make that attractive? But then you've got this, what you just mentioned. Like, I don't, I can't answer. What do you do? What do you do if you're that guy? How do you get out of that bind? I have no idea. That guy probably got some threats against his safety, I'd imagine. I mean, I've seen people do that for less, you know?
Exactly.
Wow. Beat
Man.
somebody's ass and now everybody hates you. That's
Yeah.
man.
So, what got you into jiu-jitsu originally?
Oh man. All right. So I guess this is the part where we talk about my path, right? Because we're all walking on one, yeah. So martial arts and I have been a thing. I've always been a fan since childhood. I can't tell you what my first memory of it was. There's just something so graceful about seeing somebody, you know, kick to the head. Wow, you know. And look, I mean, I don't know how old you are. I'd probably hazard a guess that we're near the same age. But I mean, I grew up in the '80s, and you know, I look younger, and that's good because daddy's hands fucking want me to tell you. Uh, there's, you know, you grow up on the Chuck Norrises and the Bruce Lees of the world, right? And then there's a whole bunch of really bad martial arts movies stuff, but it was the content we had. You know, this is when you only got 3, 4 channels. Slim pickings, man. You work with what you got. You know, if it was magazines, if it was comic books, like anything that had any sort of martial arts, like you wish that you could have the elegance, the grace, and the style that these guys had to deliver this thing and to dominate other people. It was just an interesting thing to me that I couldn't get enough. And from there on, the 90s give way, right? And what happens at the end of the 80s? We have a new thing here. We have Jean-Claude Van Damme, who is rugged yet handsome, yet much more graceful than these other guys, right? He's acrobatic and he's flexible and he's got this unending charm, right? That could fuel an entire planet. Then we go from that to Steven Seagal, where the violence is much more brutal. It's much more visceral. It's in your face. It's also at a much more rapid pace, right? It's a blistering speed that, like, wait, how did he just do that? It's much more absurd. It now we can look at it and view it as somewhat comedic, and that's fine. But you have to remember, at the time, the world was a very different place. And then martial arts sort of, I don't know, things just changed in that sense. I'm just referring to the cinematic influences. I mean, karate was always there. Judo was always there. Karate was the predominant martial art for many years. Taekwondo was much more geared towards children. And I'm not sure why that was precisely. I don't know if it had to do with maybe the communities that they were in. Maybe it was just the franchising opportunities that, from a business perspective, this thing just sort of lent itself to that. Tang Sudo and Taekwondo in America were essentially conflated with one another for a very long time. And I'm sure you've covered that as well. I'm sure you've discussed that, and I don't want to bore anybody with the details. There's a lot of people that train one thinking it's the other for a while, and back then it's like people didn't know the difference, you know. And it's
Yeah.
awesome.
And
Fact.
a funny
Yeah.
quick aside is that when I first heard about a person training Tang Sudo, it was in 2013 or 2014. Oh no, 2013. And it was exactly the same thing. He was trying to equate it to Taekwondo, but telling me it's better. So it's the exact thing. He knew to explain it to me because I hadn't heard about it. He's like, it's like Taekwondo, but then he's like, he also had a superiority complex. So exactly supporting your point.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you something. Have you ever been? And you're on the West Coast, right? So, have you ever been to a Hapkido school?
I have not been into Hapkido school, but I have sort of trained with two people who've done Hapkido. So
Okay.
I guess the answer is no. The quick answer is no.
Let me put it. Okay. Let me ask you this. Do you remember in old timey cartoons, like the old Looney Tunes, like Merry Melodies, they'd have this ham, right? And it was on with the bone in it, right? Have you ever seen one of those in real life?
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so.
I've only seen one. And that's when I used to work at a country club. So I'm like, wow, this is some real rich people shit. Like, I've only seen one. That's the same thing I have with Hapkido schools. I don't think I've ever actually seen one with my own eyes in the
Yeah.
wild. It never took off. I can't explain why. I don't know why. I don't understand why a country that was so infatuated with martial arts, I don't know if it was the brand loyalty, the understanding of karate, and the expansion of franchises like the Karate Kid. Um, I mean, maybe there is something of an explanation because you have the veterans who came back from Okinawa and brought karate with them to the United States. That set off a huge wave. Well, maybe not. It was a wave that eventually grew, but um, there is something with that. I believe making it more of a something that Americans are much more familiar with. It became much more ingrained in the culture. Kung Fu maybe just didn't scratch that itch for practitioners, but it made and still does make for outstanding cinema. It just does. It's a beautiful thing to look at and appreciate, and a beautiful thing to train in. I mean, just because I wouldn't necessarily train it for self defense, nor would I recommend anyone else do it for self defense. I'm not against the kung fu schools being open and for people to learn and train and appreciate what beauty there truly comes with it, the focus and dedication that comes with that, and sharpening your abilities. I think that's great, but it just didn't catch on in the same way. But for me, at least, I wanted to train kung fu. I never got to. I never got to train karate as a kid. My dad was dead set against that. So in the mid '90s, I moved to Dominican Republic and I started training karate at the local center, and it was a very slapdash operation. It was cheap, that's cool, but like sometimes it's like, oh, the instructor is going to be late because they didn't settle who was going to be training this week. You know, we didn't get our gis. We never got the gis. We never got the gis in the months that the operation was going. We never got them. We're supposed to get them. Um, I mean, we just go and train with sweats, and it was great. I mean, I felt great. My body changed, my mind changed, my focus changed. okay, this is dope. I like this. And then I started training with some of the Kung Fu guys a little bit. They started teaching me some of the stuff they did. It didn't last very long though, you know, and one of the most, I think the most important thing that happened to me was I started, one of my friends was friends with this other dude. So we all lived nearby. And the other dude, Orlando, he trained in what was then called full contact. A full contact was kickboxing. And they weren't doing what the karate guys were doing. Us karate guys were doing, we weren't just so, it wasn't so much forms. It wasn't quite Kyokushin, but we weren't sparring with each other. These guys were sparring with each other. They were going easy, but they were sparring. There is a very important lesson to being punched in the face. And I think that if you're not familiar with that, there is something of a mystique. There's like, it's like the sword of Damocles, you know, like, I better not get hit in the face. But then once you get hit 15, 20 times, you're like, oh, that's it. Okay. Like this spell is broken, and you don't feel that that fear or that preoccupation is immediately evaporated. This guy didn't punch me because we didn't use gloves. First thing he does, side thrust kick, bam, right in the chest. Sends me onto the floor because we were on the floor, sliding on the linoleum. Right? I get up. Next thing he does, guess what it is? Same side thrust kick, right in the chest again, sliding on the linoleum. I get up. I'm like, all right, cool. Now I know he's clearly he's in love with this. Like, all right, I can sidestep this. Number 3, sidestep thrust kick to the chest again, sends me sliding. I'm like, oh, this is bullshit, man. Like, you know, and then I wanted to train with those guys, but I never really got around to it. And then I just sort of trained sporadically here and there. And it wasn't even like, you know, I wanted to keep doing it, but I had other stuff going on. I had school, you know, I got into playing basketball a lot. Then college happened. I stopped doing anything athletic whatsoever. And so when I eventually got into college, I got interested in capoeira. I never pulled the trigger on it because the schedule wasn't really in accordance with what I was doing. And I didn't really have the kind of money back then. I was paying for college on my own. So I had class during the day, work at night. I no time or money for capoeira. That wasn't going to happen. Then I moved to the US. I'm here for a while. And then in 2008, I'm like, you know what? I got to get back into training. And the thing that pushed me to it the most, back then when we used to give our computers digital STDs by going with LimeWire and Kazaa, again, the younger cast might not know. Y'all don't know the struggle. Uncle Victor's trying to tell you, you don't really know what it's like to end up with like, well, wait a minute, I thought I was downloading Tremors 2, and suddenly, you know, I've got like some trauma collection, you know, like this is, I didn't order, I didn't try to, I didn't seek out Sergeant Kabuki Man 2. Somehow this shit just happened. Boss Rutan's leg locks. Yeah, I don't know if you ever got to see that one.
I have not, but I could imagine.
It should be on YouTube. It would be a travesty if it wasn't on YouTube. And I just started seeing that. I'm like, damn, man, I'm really missing out because so my first experiences with MMA were sometime in the late 90s. I didn't have cable. We didn't order pay-per-views, but I was visiting New York and I'm just seeing this stuff. I'm like, wow, that's pretty brutal. And then there were like, again, sporadically, they'd show some of those fights while I was living in DR, and it was like, here's, you know, some Taekwondo guy taking on, you know, Ken Shamrock. And I'm like, oh shit, this is gonna be nuts. And then finally Pride happened. Now I fell in love with Pride because I had not only had been a lifelong martial arts fan, I'd been a lifelong pro wrestling fan. And this just married the two because you had the presentation and grandiosity of professional wrestling with the violence of like real world stuff. Like when Rampage Jackson grabbed that Japanese dude and hit him with a side suplex that separated his shoulder. I don't remember. And again, I feel bad. I don't remember the gentleman's name because I used to remember it. My brain is fried now. That to me was like, oh, this is insane. This is remarkable. This is nuts. When he powerbombed Ricardo Varona. I mean, back then, how do you top that? No one had ever. You don't see that in a street fight. No one does that. No one wraps their legs around another dude's head. But no one also is crazy enough to pick that dude up and slam him down either. You know, I was snake bit, you know, like, damn, I want any chance I get to see this, I'm going to check it out. And I loved and preferred Pride to the UFC because, you know, you had the white ring, the bright lights, you know, the fighters were elevated or brought down from the rafters, you know, like I always say that the main metaphor is like the gods of combat are here to entertain you mere mortals. you are not worthy of this. Are you not in awe of it? That's kind of like, I feel like that was sort of the subtext in a way, and they were kind of right. You look at the way that the ranks of just specifically heavyweight, and then eventually some of the lighter weight fighters, but the legends that were out there, the way these guys were fighting, the intensity, the beauty, uh, it was nuts. And Pride had its problems. I mean, I'm the first one to admit it. I'm kind of glad Pride stayed dead, that they didn't, because it had, excuse me. I mean, organized crime involvement notwithstanding, there were just problems within how the fights were conducted. The yellow card thing being so arbitrary and so, I mean, it's a good idea in concept, but in practice, I'm not sure that that's the best thing that you want to do, especially as bad as reffing is now. But I just don't feel like that was something that never left me. And so I'm watching Boss Rudin, whom I had always associated with Pride, whom I'd seen maybe fight once before, but he was always a personality who was there. He was always, by then he was living in Los Angeles. He was on TV a lot. I mean, relative to what other fighters were. And yeah, okay, so I'm watching this leg lock video. I'm like, I really need to get into grappling. I need to do something. Or not just grappling, I need to get into martial arts in general. And I check out this Vietnamese dude who had a Wing Chun thing. And I'm like, let me check out this jiu-jitsu place first. It was a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu spot, Balance Studios, shout out to them, represent. And I just go, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, all right, it's not huge, but it's cool. People here super nice. Everybody's very warm and welcoming. I mean, every cult does that, but this didn't feel like that. Like I've always studied, I've always looked at how cults operate. This wasn't that. This was a very much like very hands off. Hey man, if you like what you see, great. We offer this, and we take this. And they were very true to their word. And all the time that I've spent training, the culture has remained the same. Everything has been very. It's been great. There was no false advertising whatsoever on that front. I never felt any pressure. And so I just started training. And it took me a long time to really make improvements gradually because I wasn't as full on into the culture of jiu-jitsu. Something, again, nothing ever really tells you about. It's like learning a language. Like you really need to be involved. If you're learning Italian, listen to music in Italian, watch Italian TV shows and film, because that's you're going to, but I didn't do that with jiu-jitsu. It was just a thing that I'd show up and I'd do and I'd learn. I'm like, all right, cool. And then I think about it a little bit. It was kind of like playing Tetris. When you're done, you're still thinking about it, but I'm not seeking out other things. So that was another thing that held me back for a while. And yeah, I mean, since then, then there have been like Muay Thai classes, which I haven't done too many of those. Yeah, it's just been a really wild ride since then.
Yeah, it's so interesting about, yeah, gotta get into the culture of things. Again, that's exactly what helps you learn the best. And I think I'm the same. My jujitsu journey has been pretty challenging. And part of it is just because, like, I'll go to class and maybe I'll think about it or talk about it for a few minutes after class, but then I don't think about it afterwards. So it's like that drive to just be immersed is not in there. Like for me, the only reason I even started doing jiu-jitsu is because just for the sake of when I want to commentate fights, I want to be more knowledgeable. But like I never had that inherent need to be like, oh, I want to be a jiu-jitsu person or I want to be a grappler or nothing like that. I mean, when I saw those Gracie challenges, how they just took down and beat up all the stand-up fighters, I was like, that was one of those ones. It's like I got to learn this, but it still wasn't like, oh, I want to be like this or I want to be like the best of this. It just never occurred to me. I guess it's growing up with a culture that was so kung fu based. It's just like I always just gravitate towards flashy stuff, and that's why I'm trying to learn more capoeira. It's funny you're talking about capoeira too, because people who do kung fu, I think, can naturally transition to capoeira pretty easily if they just take that sort of mentality, that hard work mentality, and just train in it. So I guess for me, it's a guy who really likes movement, maybe not quite trying to be the most proficient fighter. I think capoeira is my way to go for now.
Well, capoeira is also physically challenging in ways that other things aren't, and not only that, but you have the music playing. There's a collaborative thing. It's a party in a way. So there's that, and the historical significance of like here's a style that was created by slaves that were developing a martial art under the noses of their overseers and masters. I think that's really quite genius. I think there's an appreciation of that, especially for someone who's really been studying a lot more about African diaspora, like myself, for like the last maybe 3-4 years. Um, I've just been like really immersed in that. And it's just you have a deeper sense of like, yeah, man, these guys really made something out of literally nothing and made it again, made it beautiful. And you know, whether or not, you know, whether or not it's effective, much like the Kung Fu thing, does it need to be? I mean, it has a right to exist. It has a right to be beautiful. There's lessons that can be taken here that may not necessarily apply directly to fighting, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. What I have a problem with is these guys like, look, all right, I'm not going to say his name, okay? If you've been around the internet long enough, you know who I'm talking about, and maybe some of you don't because he wasn't like big time or anything, but he did attract some heat a number of years ago, and I used to clown on him a lot. There's this cat in Chicago, all right? He's a Sifu in Chicago. I won't say anything else past that, but he was very super anti MMA. Not
I know exactly who you're talking about,
okay.
and I won't say his
Okay.
name. We'll talk about him after the
Okay.
interview. Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
I know exactly that dude. Wow.
I knew if anybody was gonna know, I knew you would know. I knew. I'm so happy that okay, good. I'm happy I'm right. Because usually I hate being right. I'm usually right for terrible reasons. This cat started making these videos about how much he hated MMA. I don't know if it's a matter of him, much like those guys in China that felt like, you know, their culture was being threatened. I don't think it was that because this dude is very much American in many respects, much like I am, much like you are, right? I mean, this is, you know, yeah, I mean, I'm Dominican, but I'm American as well. Like if you come from immigrant cultures, you know, anyone who doesn't understand that, I can't break that down for you right now. I don't have the time. I'm sorry. It's a long process, but you know what I mean. This cat, I don't know if he felt that his meal ticket in Kung Fu was being threatened or what, but his entire angle was homophobia. His entire thing was like, you're a man on top of another man, sweating. Who does this? How do you fight? Stand up and fight like men. And he'd put up his hands like this. And you're like, but you are fighting like men. I don't understand this. And then he would reveal, his insecurity or perhaps another layer of it in some of the other videos where he would say that grappling was too dangerous. This is something that shouldn't be taught to the common man because people are going to be out there beating each other up worse. You know, like it's too effective. You're tacitly admitting that this is too good and that what you're perhaps focused on might not be this. And therefore you're having a problem with that. I don't know. I don't know what if there's a way to narrow it down to something much more granular, but maybe it's just a combination because life is like that. Maybe it's just a combination of things. And it never sat right with me. It always really irked me with that this guy was, and thankfully, again, he's not a guy who was super popular. He didn't deserve to be popular. In fact, there was a really fun story I read, a Yelp review of his school, where a guy said, "This is the greatest in the world." Yeah, you ready for this? So his school was on the second floor of this building, right? The first floor was a Chinese restaurant that he co-owned with his sister. So it must have been the family business. Maybe he inherited the deal. I don't know what happened, but he owned the place and he would try to get his students. He's like, listen, for you to get better at martial arts, you really need to fuel your body properly. And the best way to do it is you know, proper Chinese food. So if you guys eat here, like he was trying to funnel his business into his business. And you're like, bro, what the fuck what are you doing? You know, and that right there, I just, you know, I don't know what that says about someone's personality. It ain't good. But and again, I just I'm not saying that he's running a McDojo. Maybe he is a great instructor. He would show some of the techniques and stuff. The guy was in super great shape. He seemed to have taught really good fundamentals, but it's just when you get to the self-defense stuff, like here's knife defense, you're like, ooh, buddy, yeah, you're gonna get somebody killed out there, bro. This is not, you know, you're teaching gun disarms. Ooh, buddy, that's not that don't look good, man. You know, the more time you spend in reality with us folks, again, not a good look.
Yeah, it's really funny because what people don't know, see, a lot of people on YouTube now always complain about demonetization and getting their channels taken down. He actually had his channel taken down once.
He
So
did.
as he was getting really popular with all his rants, I guess one time he had a gun, and so that video got taken down. And then it just, I think YouTube eventually caught on. So in 2015, he had his channel taken down, and so now
he must have had her like massively reported or something, or at least
yeah,
substantially.
exactly. It must have been massively reported. So what people see now with that many followers is actually his second attempt at the channel, and it's so crazy that the algorithm just got him popular again. You know, he re-uploaded some of the most extreme rants he never re-uploaded, but he basically re-uploaded 90% of his rants, man. And they got promoted again. It's just like, I don't think he knows anything about YouTube. He just happened to hit the YouTube algorithm. And so I'm looking at his channel and he still has a lot more subscribers than he's probably like top 5 still when it comes to martial arts channels and subscribers. I'm like, how did that
No.
happen after he
Are
got
you
his channel
sure?
taken down in 2015? Yeah,
Are you
sometimes
sure?
it's just
Top
unfair, the
5?
algorithm.
Top 5, are you sure?
Yeah, and subscribers, because you know Shane Faison's definitely number 1, right? And I think Master Wong's number 2. He might be number 3, dude.
No.
He's got a lot of subscribers. Again, people like you and I have forgotten about him until someone mentions him, right? But I think it's people who don't train just somehow gravitate towards them. I think that what happens is he kind of fulfills the stereotype of, you know, you got that like really zen headmaster, but then you have his student who's like the slight bully but well-intentioned type of like assistant master. And he's the one that actually teaches you the most about martial arts, whereas the headmaster teaches you like the final really good stuff, right? So I think he fulfills a kind of movie trope, and that's why people gravitate towards him.
Maybe that. I mean, I don't know. I've never spoken to anyone that trained with him or near him or anything like that. But you got to understand something. This man had hundreds of videos circa 2014, 2015, and he'd have these philosophical arguments. I don't remember what he called them, but it was in that vein. He was in bed. He was in his bed with his phone or with his camera, and he'd just go on for 30, 40 minutes. It never ended. And I sat there thinking, like, who is this for? This isn't quite content that maybe would gain or attract a podcast audience. I don't know how popular those videos were relative to his other content regarding training, regarding all the other stuff. I understand, and I think it was maybe because of the crew over at Middle Easy at the time, because they would always highlight people like this, that, you know, this guy was just bad mouthing MMA. I'm like, oh, let me see what's going on. And I'm sitting there like, oh, no. And look, again, I say this, I mention them, but nothing but respect for the guys in Middle Easy. I've always liked those guys. I've never had any, you know, I might disagree with maybe how certain things are framed, but I've never had like a problem or anything with them. So you know, shout out to them. If you know, if you're not familiar with Middle Easy, check them out from time to time. They're pretty fun. This guy, it's so strange to me. Like I just looked at it, you know, like Chris Rock had that joke about women that don't perform fellatio in modern times. Like he looked at them like an old refrigerator. They still make you? Now, whether you find that joke tasteful or not, whether you think it's funny or not, what I'm making the point, what I'm trying to get at is that you look at a guy like that and you think, like, really, in America, in this environment, you're going to say this about mixed martial arts while you're doing this. You know, it just doesn't, it really never sat well with me that he would be this aggressive. And then on top of that, to be so incredibly homophobic. Like he had this thing where he was teaching the triangle choke of death. You remember that one? Yeah. You remember what his advice was?
I remember that. Yeah. Don't
Yeah.
wipe, don't shower.
Don't wipe, don't shower for like a month. And then when you wrap your legs around the guy, it's gonna kill. And you're like, are you 9? Like my son is 6. He could come up with something way funnier than that. You know what I'm saying? And he's never been in a triangle choke. So like, I don't, you know, it just doesn't. Oh, there was that Naga video. You remember the guy who was, it was a jiu-jitsu tournament, guy catches another dude in a triangle choke and he farts in the dude's face. And
I
then the guy
remember
who's in
that.
the triangle vomits and they have
Yeah.
to stop the match. And then
Yeah.
just the iconic line, you farted in my face, dog. Like, oh, come on. You feel so bad for the guy. But that wasn't this. That was not this whole thing where like, I mean, I can't tell you. If again, for people who never saw this, for people who aren't familiar, I don't know that I can properly convey how depraved and how just how painful it was to watch this because of how craven and how poisonous this guy's discourse was. I mean, this guy would talk about how if you're in a street fight and you choke a guy out, what's to stop the guy who's still conscious from raping the guy who just got choked? And you think, Why is this occupying any space in your mind? You know, and he would apply the same thing to mixed martial arts. So, oh, the guy who wins, he could do anything to the guy who lost. Like, no, 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 no. I don't think you understand. There's a referee in there. Like, stop right there. You know what I mean? Like, just no. Your entire argument falls apart when you just sit back and go, yeah, nah. Like, just blowing on it. That alone dismantles your entire argument. That means you're not exactly a very your sense for reasoning perhaps and constructive thought is not quite there, and that's the kind of thing that bothers me. I mean, the thing that I'm glad that there's less and less people like that by the day in this country, at least. But not just, I mean, look around the world. We've all seen how MMA has influenced things. So it's gone from circus attraction and faces of death, again another one for the old heads, one of those things, to something of a punchline, to now, like, okay, this is how it works. You see major Hollywood movie stars working on it. You see politicians training like this. I didn't think that we would go down this rabbit hole talking about that guy, but it's like, oh my God, I feel like we need to have a conversation about guys like that.
Yeah.
There's no reason that this man should have a channel that has that many subscribers.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm so glad you brought it up, because after you brought it up, I looked up his channel again to confirm he still had that many subscribers. And two, I was looking at reviews on Google Maps, and he gets a lot of troll 5-star reviews. It's hilarious. Read the 5-star reviews. It's all people just making fun of him, but so they don't get taken down, the reviews, or get reported. It's all 5 stars. It's really funny.
Okay.
Yeah.
So wow. Okay,
Yeah.
so that I respect that. That's kind of like the Brendan Schaub thing. I don't know if you've seen the Reddit thing.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
the fighter and the kid, the podcast that Brendan Schaub has with Brian Callen, they have a Reddit page that was started presumably by fans, and now that Reddit page is essentially dedicated exclusively to hating them. I mean, like, all they do is, and I presume these are people that began as fans and were there from the outset, and now they're like, oh, this is there's no reason for this to happen. I don't know. I haven't really taken too many visits to it, but they get blisteringly bad. I mean, they get really they dig in, and this is a much friendlier and funnier way to do it, to leave a 5-star review to ensure you don't get taken down, and then be like, actually, the guy sucks, and let me tell you why.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. So I had a friend who was really active in the Opie and Anthony subreddit before the subreddit just disappeared, because it was the same thing. It started out as a group dedicated to them, and it became like a group to hate on them. It's so funny how these internet subcultures evolve. Like, it sounds like the fighter and the kid went like that direction too.
Maybe they blazed through it in record time. Because I feel like maybe a portion of it might be the fact that, like, it's like South Park, right? Like, I thought it was funny, back when I was in my early 20s, but now it's like, it's not my speed. Maybe I've grown, maybe the world has changed, maybe they've changed. I don't know what it is, but I'm not with it anymore. But I don't hate it. Whereas this sort of thing, like Opie and Anthony, I mean, Anthony Cumia was a guy who, his claim to fame, what got him on the map, was literally a video where he was doing blackface, making fun of O.J. Simpson facing execution. If you think that's funny today, I mean, watch the video, hear the song. Go ahead. It's a parody song that he did. If you still think that's funny now, if you think that that's good, that that's something that should be out there, okay. I mean, I guess we don't have as much in common as we might have thought, but what good can you truly expect from that? I've never had, and this is just me personally, I've never liked anything the guy's said, or found anything that he did to be particularly cool or funny or anything, other than the idea of getting comedians in there and being as let them sort of go nuts and do whatever. So, I mean, that's clearly led to terrible things now, as we're seeing. So, yeah, wow, good times.
Yeah. And then I'll say one more thing about martial arts people in Chicago. There's another clown there too. So I don't know why I'm a Chicago boy. So
okay. So
I'm a Chicago boy. So I don't understand that either, because my memories, just growing up in the 90s in Chicago, I remember lots of Taekwondo schools, and of course I trained kung fu in Chicago. So I don't know where all the clowns come from. I mean, Chicago's a big city, right? It's the
Yeah.
third biggest city. You know, if you consider LA County a kind of a city, then LA, of course, is the biggest. But of course, New York City, city-wise, is the biggest. But Chicago's like number 3. So maybe just it has a lot of people in the cold. Whether it gets to people, I don't know. But there's another clown. I'm not saying his name either. But his claim to fame was insulting Bruce Lee, and then he kind of made a big transition. I think you know who I'm talking about. Now he's like completely off the hook. But for a while he was just like teaching these like really really bad Wing Chun techniques, and it's just like I'll show you his channel afterwards. I think you know
Yeah,
what I'm talking about.
I feel like I'm, like
Yeah.
as much as my rational reaction is like, I want nothing to do with this. My morbid curiosity just won't let me live.
Yeah.
I'll be up until 3 a.m. going like, God damn, I gotta know who this guy is. It's like,
Yeah.
I can't. It's helped me become good at certain things to be this obsessive with.
Yeah. Yeah. And the way I discovered this guy was there was a really good show. It's actually, I credit this show as one of the things that got me to start Fight Commentary Breakdown. So he was another Wing Chun guy who wanted to go around the world exploring Wing Chun. And it was really cool. He made like 3 episodes, and then I think he had a little bit of a mental breakdown. And so, yeah. And also, the truth is, from my understanding, he didn't really understand Wing Chun either. So the way he was going about it was going to lead to him having a mental breakdown anyways. But he's not a bad person. He's a well-intentioned person. He just was trained by the wrong people. There's that whole debate about whether Wing Chun's effective at all, which we're not going to get into. But, he started the show where he would go around and seek out Wing Chun masters. And the first Wing Chun master he sought out was this guy in Chicago. That's how I discovered this Chicago-based dude. And so I actually thought he was a cool dude. And, until I started training more, and I was like, wow, this guy, he's literally just he benches a lot. So he's all just muscling. He doesn't understand anything about fighting. But that's how I discovered this guy. And I forgot where I was going from this. Yeah, but I guess I had a phase where I was like, oh, I want to kind of see what he's doing. And I could just tell that the guy in his heart kind of had insecurities, much like the other guy you were talking about. And it's just like, sometimes maybe it just like, I don't mind telling people, look, you challenge me to a fight. I'll be like, okay, you win. I don't mind being like that. But I guess maybe some people just,
listen,
they attach too much to their ego when it comes to like their ability to fight. I don't know why.
Yeah. I'm not too proud to admit, like, listen, man, you got, and I'll probably, maybe I'll concede a little easier than on some days, because like, I don't have the patience to get my elbow broken today. I just like, okay, for you guys muscle. All right, you know what? I could I get out of this? Maybe, but like, I'm going to give you this one today because whatever. But I totally understand your point. Like, you don't want to deal with some of the aggression and some of the ego that's out there. So I mean, I'm glad that we're on the same wavelength, because that's just not that's not productive.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess some people just maybe they form so much their identity on their ability to fight or something like that. I mean, thank goodness we live in a world where you can shape your identity however much you want. So I guess and maybe some of that credit goes to the fact that I took a big break in my martial arts journey, almost like an 8-year break, right? I didn't get back into martial arts until 2012. So from college and high school, I was basically not training.
Yeah.
And so I guess that helped me form my identity around other things. But maybe, let's say, because the Yamasaki branches of the jiu-jitsu were really close to where I lived. I lived in the DC area at the time when I quit martial arts, kind of took a break from martial arts. So, but if I discovered Yamasaki and then I became a jiu-jitsu person, so by the time I went out into the real world, I would have had 8 years of jiu-jitsu training. Maybe I would have attached my mental state, spiritual, whatever, so much to jiu-jitsu that I would have been like just another jiu-jitsu bro, jiu-jitsu takes on guns, jiu-jitsu solves all your problems, jiu-jitsu diet, I might have been like one of those guys. So sometimes breaks in martial arts good. It gets you perspective into there's a bigger world.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And you know what, I do think, because actually, funny you mentioned the Yamasaki crew, because I trained at a school that was a Yamasaki affiliate when I went to Dominican Republic back in 2016. I was so surprised. I was so happy to see it. I don't know if they're still affiliated or not, but I had so much fun. I mean, and the level was high. Like, those dudes were, I was so surprised to see that jiu-jitsu had caught on so strongly after, I lived there for like a decade, and I'm seeing that it's it's being taught well, it's being repped well. It's really cool. The Chicago thing, I'm still baffled by, because I mean, this is the same city that spawned Count Dante. Now, again, if you're under a certain age, you don't know about Count Dante. Yeah. So look, I used to love, back when we were kids, right? If you were into video games and you had a Game Pro magazine circa 1990, all right, you would scour that thing for weeks because you didn't have anything else. We didn't have the immediacy of websites announcing things. So you'd be looking at that same picture of Star Fox 2 being rumored in 94. And you're like, well, maybe it'll come out. Maybe I can't wait for that to happen. And if it got canceled, you wouldn't know for another year. But you'd be looking at it, and at the end, in the back of those magazines, you would find some insane ads and stuff that just you wouldn't find anywhere else. And the same thing would happen with two things: the most egregious offenders in publication, martial arts magazines and bodybuilding magazines. And holy, you would find some of the weirdest stuff. The weirdest stuff that I would find in martial arts magazines, I used to obsess, I used to pour over them. Was stuff where they were teaching like chi abilities, where like you could push somebody back, a lot of the no touch stuff. And when Street Fighter happened, coincidentally, all these ads for you being able to fire electricity from your fingers and generate fire, it's just real funny to me. I mean, this is supposed to be geared and advertised towards someone my age, but people my age are playing this, and we know this is fantasy. What are we driving at here, Sensei Clyde? Like, where is this going? So there was way before that a lot of that weird advertising, a lot of that false advertising. Count Dante in Chicago, I want to say back in the 60s, maybe 70s. Let's say late 60s, and cut the difference. He was a bullshit artist. He was a bullshito dude. And I mean, and shout out to bullshito.com. I used to spend a lot of time there, because when they would tear down guys like Ashita Kim, I got a PhD in Ashita Kim. I mean, like, for a while, you could ask me anything, I could tell you, like, oh yeah, he lives in Pensacola. Yeah. See, so he did this, and he did, like, I could have told you so many things about this man that I'd never met, has no effect whatsoever on my life. But I was just obsessed with finding, because I've always had another thing I've been obsessed with is con men and fraudsters. And holy, we got a lot of them in martial arts. And Count Dante was one of the more lucrative ones, because he would have these ads in the backs of comic books, and teaching Dim Mak Death Touch. And I'm just, again, a Chicago thing. Like, why is that? Like the Casamassa family was, from what I understood, pretty big names in terms of karate. In fact, Sensei's son was on Mac Masters, if you remember that show. And again, it was not familiar. It was similar to, I want to maybe compare it to kind of like Power Rangers, I guess, where they would have like these tournaments, and it were really just martial arts exhibitions at Universal Studios or some place. I don't know. Maybe it was in California. I don't know. I don't care. Ho Sung Pak, who was the actor who played Liu Kang in Mortal Kombat 3 in the digitization, he was on that show. Hakeem Alston, like a couple of really strong names were on that show. Shannon Lee, Bruce Lee's daughter, was like the announcer. So they treated it like it was like American Gladiators, but they were having fights against these random ninjas, and whoever performed the best would get these prizes. But there was a soap opera storyline that ran in conjunction with it. It was a very ambitious thing for the mid '90s. I kind of I respected the breadth and scope that they were trying to achieve, but that was perhaps too much. But the point is, Chris Casamassa played Red Dragon on that show. He's from Chicago. It's a big deal. I mean, like, these were the people that I knew, like, okay, Chicago martial arts, like, these people are supposed to be the big thing. In fact, there's a great video. There was a channel on YouTube, and I think they're still active, called Everything is Terrible. Are you familiar with them? Okay, so what they would do is they'd take media from the 80s and early 90s, and like just some of the most absurd, like, stuff that you would think Tim and Eric would come up with on Adult Swim, but no, I can assure you this stuff is very real. And they had one where it was called Rapist Beware, and they had an actual theme song. I'm going to send you the video. You clearly haven't seen this, but based on your reaction, and I love that, because now I have something to share with you, and you're going to love it or hate it. I don't know, but the point is, it was self-defense and prevention for sexual assault, and the way in which it's presented is like, oh, you guys have no idea how to handle the subject matter, do you? Like, there's a gravity that needs to be lent to discussing topics like that. and they clearly did not have it. And oh boy, the tips and the advice that they give is like, some of it's like, okay, I get it. If you're a karate person, this is clearly what you're going to teach someone. But there's the grand finale of that video. You're going to need to pick your jaw up off the floor with like, you know, with like a winch or something. It's going to be with a pulley at least, because it's tough.
It's funny because when you were mentioning the WMAC Masters, I actually watched that when I was in Chicago. That was my favorite show because they would play it during the Saturday morning hours when kids were awake and their parents were sleeping. So I watched TV for 3 hours, and it came on towards the end. So like Sailor Moon, of course, was like at 6 or 7 because they didn't want kids to watch Sailor Moon because that's a little too sexualized. But
the imports didn't have the same commercial backing, so that's why they were on earlier where it was cheaper. Dragon Warrior and Mega Man, both franchises had TV shows. They were on at 6 a.m. Nobody really, but like the more popular shows came on later.
I remember this show you're talking about. I totally remember. I remember that one episode. I don't remember what the guy's name, but the guy who always had the thing around his like Ryu, he had that whatever it's called.
The Hachiman.
Yeah, and he like fell off, and it was like a big dramatic moment. Him and another guy, they were fighting, and they both got kicked off by the other guy. Yeah, I remember that. I still remember that scene.
Because I grew up in New York, and so like, you know, out on Long Island, at least that show was on around noon. So I don't know if they were at least maybe 11. So I guess they were trying to either like bridge the gap between kiddie shows and American Gladiators, or I don't know if that's what they were attempting to do. What my memory of that was when that one Vietnamese dude, Tsunami, like he finally won his event, and like I guess he was like the lovable loser of the show, and he finally got a win, and that was like a big deal. He'd do like the Bruce Lee nose thing here. And the other thing was outside of the fighting, there was something in a briefcase, and this one dude handcuffed himself to it and was getting on a helicopter, mafia movie style. Like it looked like some Hong Kong triad action was going to happen, and somebody, I don't know if somebody actually pulled out a gun or what. But it was like, oh, okay, this is going places. I wonder what's going to happen next. And then I never saw it again. I don't know what. Yeah, they only did 2 seasons. I don't know what. I'd imagine it's on DVD somewhere.
Yeah. The archive of it, someone uploaded the entire thing on YouTube too. So,
okay.
I'll send it to you. I found it.
Yeah,
brings back memories of the 90s because I don't know if I told you this. I mean, you probably, if you watch my channel, you know, I spent a few years after Chicago in China. And, you know, Unhappy Jerry was fighting all the time in China. So, like, that's where I got the myth. You see, a lot of people don't realize this, but the reason I didn't break out of the Kung Fu Bushido quicker was because I used Kung Fu very effectively in China. But that's because most of my peers didn't train at all. So if you have a little bit of training versus someone who doesn't train, of course you're going to beat them. So I thought Kung Fu was the best, right? And then until you realize, oh yeah, if someone just trains judo or whatever, you can't stand a chance against them. But so for a long time, I'm like, yeah, but like from my experience, Kung Fu, I was basically like kind of a bully. I would use Kung Fu to bully people. I'm like, so where is this disconnect happening? Until you realize it's just because everyone's studying in China. Nobody trained. You know, my parents put me in Kung Fu class. I don't know why. I guess it's a few hours where they didn't have to care about me, right? So,
well, and there's also like the reputation of like, well, this is where he'll develop discipline.
Yeah.
And he'll have that outlet for his energy. So he won't be as rambunctious at home or in school. He'll be a lot more, he'll have some sort of balance with that. And I think that's great in theory.
Yeah.
You got to keep an eye on that though, because you don't want, you know, I don't know how many kids did jiu-jitsu and have turned out to be bullies, you know, after starting jiu-jitsu at an early age. I don't think it is a salve. I don't think it's a cure-all for all these. So when people say like, oh, I think all cops should do jiu-jitsu, like, no, I think there's way more. Jiu-jitsu in and of itself will not make you a better person. That is not true. Any martial art you could say that of. I mean, there's people that get into boxing, they get into Muay Thai, and they become better people. But maybe it's because they find something in there that allows them to structure themselves and organize the manner in which they think. I mean, I do really think that, I have no evidence for this, but I really do think that grappling in particular, especially chain grappling, things like Sambo and Jiu-Jitsu, may have the ability to open different neural pathways.
Yeah.
I wish there was some sort of study, because you are problem solving in a different way. This is like people that get really into crossword puzzles, and then they start applying that logic elsewhere. Like, you know, the joke that I have with my wife was, nobody packs a suitcase like her. she never really played Tetris, but the joke is like, yeah, you're doing that real world Tetris here because
Yeah.
you find a way to, so I'm curious as to where that what that really leads to. And your particular situation was sort of the inverse of mine, right? You learned kung fu and it was effective for you. I learned karate and like I never got into fights, but the moment I sparred with a guy, holy shit, my reality got checked real quick, like and even then I didn't think, well, this is better than karate, I need to switch over. My whole thing was like, well, maybe I could do both, or maybe I could just do better with karate and find something to counter that. Because in my mind, that same kick, we were also taught that in karate. So I don't know. And it turns out that, the answer is not really that cut and dry. It's just a
Yeah,
matter.
it really isn't. It really isn't. I mean, the thing I thought about immediately with, for example, Sambo, Judo, wrestling, or Jiu-jitsu is that because you're constantly testing and on the mats and getting humbled, besides the neural pathways, that helps your ego, right? But like you said, I've seen Jiu-jitsu guys who like muscle way too hard or do things, so it's not a cure, so to speak. Certain people, no matter what, their personality is going to make them behave a certain way. But then I love what you said also about, I mean, I guess that was my kind of justification for whenever a technique didn't work. It's like, oh, I just need to train that kung fu technique harder, or I need to train it differently. It wasn't that, oh, maybe I should completely throw the baby with the bathwater out, right? So there's a lot of kind of thinking, a lot of kind of justifications, and they're not wrong. It's you're starting to see cases of effective kung fu when trained in a different way, right? So of course it's still, I would argue, and I would argue those cases of effective kung fu, they probably could have gotten there if they just trained kickboxing or Muay Thai. They would have gotten there in shorter span of time. But that's a big debate in the martial arts community too.
I think it might do also with a lot of the stuff that, again, that you do such a great job of highlighting, which is, guys, this is what it looks like in a real environment. Okay. And I think that a lot of this stuff, because you fall into the theoretical, we become so attached that we become enslaved to the theoretical when it comes to striking. And karate was like that. It's like, well, if he comes this way, I'll move that way and I'll do this. Well, okay, until you actually have the guy cocking his fist back, launching it right at your head. You know what I mean? Like, what if he's a slower puncher? What if he's faster? What if his hand speed and his ability to close the distance isn't quite the same? We've seen effective karate guys in mixed martial arts. We've seen Machida, we've seen Wonder Boy. We've also seen how some of those guys have faltered as well. And those guys are training in realistic environments. Those guys are actually sparring. Those guys are actively engaging with other people and getting different looks and understanding the realities of conflict in real time. And they have to solve those problems in real time. Whereas like when we were dumb kids in karate, you're just like, well, I'm going to throw this punch here and then this punch. You're like, yeah, but what if that guy's a boxer? What if he throws a hook? We didn't learn hooks in karate. I never threw a hook till I was a grown ass man. You know what I mean? Like it didn't factor in because, again, we were young and we were dumb and it was the 90s. We didn't know any better. And that's just, again, it's just another thing of not being exposed. So I think a lot of this stuff that you cover, seeing guys that have been for generations, and I mean, maybe not generations, styles and techniques that go back centuries, except they never really trained against each other on a consistent basis. If they did, it was very sporadic. It was very rare. And now you see what that looks like. There's not really much you can do about that. Now it's cool in a way because it's like, all right, well, now you're dragging this thing out of the position in which it was. And some of that stubbornness has eroded. And now we're seeing something maybe even more beautiful in a way, right? Because you're seeing the perseverance of these older techniques and this older philosophy. And there's something really, I don't think, now that I say this, I don't think I've done as good a job at explaining the value that has. Because this is showing like, okay, no, this martial art isn't trash. You don't, as you said, like throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, no, we can keep this. We can reshape this. We can make it something not different in a way that's threatening to our culture, but rather something that can show that same expression and that same pride that we have and use what we've perfected and just adapt it to a different world because the world has changed. And maybe we can change with that too. And I think there's something there that could be a metaphor for life as well. I don't know. I mean, it just seems like something that it's a hearts and minds campaign that needs to be taken into effect.
Yeah, exactly. Especially, I really love seeing, now some of these videos are a stretch, but I love seeing people attempt to kind of reinterpret a lot of these more ancient systems and try to reinterpret it for the battlefield. Oh, this would have looked different if you had a spear, like, yeah, some of that seems like a stretch, but I like those attempts because
Yeah.
at least you're trying to not just teach what your teacher taught you, but actually think about, okay, let's look at the inception and why it even had a function, right? You're taking what's called a functionalism path.
Yes. Yes. And you're I think you're dead on with that. I mean, it's worth exploring. I mean, look, how many times are you going to see in a modern conflict a guy running at you with a spear, or 10 guys running at you? You're not, right? It's not going to happen. Does that mean that this isn't worth thinking about? Is this not an exercise that can help in some, excuse me, in some practical manner that could just lead to, you don't know what it might lead to. You don't know what it could branch out and become. So I mean, it's at least worth looking at. It's nice to have those thoughts out there. It's nice to see that things are sort of coming outside of the box. And look, I that is something that is worthy of respect, and we need to really give it a little more shine.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what's really funny is I'm going to do another video on Aikido because after I did that first one on Aikido, I got some really interesting comments I never thought about. One was that the way the Japanese language is structured in a very similar way to Chinese, but also different, right? In Chinese, if you put certain characters together, it changes the meaning. And it's the same in Japanese, but in this case, the word Aiki, apparently, it's like an emergent word. So Aiki is not the sum of the word I and ki. Because
Right.
the way I was breaking down the word is what a lot of Aikidokas do. They break down Aikido, so 和气道 in Chinese. But apparently, if you put the word Aiki, 和气, as you say in Chinese, together, it means something completely different. So it's like, when they said that, I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. And apparently the word Aiki actually has to specifically deal with schools of weapon. So it's like, whoa, okay. I'm not qualified, honestly, to keep exploring that. That would require me going to Japan to trace the roots. So
Wow.
my
I'm
updated
learning,
Aikido
I'm
video is
learning
not going to be
Japanese
about
now.
that.
I'm
What's up,
learning
sorry?
Japanese. I'm learning Japanese now. And,
Okay.
I was doing swimmingly until like, okay, hiragana, great, katakana, great. Now I got to the kanji, I'm like, oh shit. For a while, I hit a wall, bro. Like it's different, but it's because they're borrowing from Chinese characters,
Yeah.
and okay, like fine, I have no problem with the calligraphy element. It's just like, shit, I got to commit this to memory, and that what you just mentioned there, as far as the root of that being what it is, that is very compelling now, and this is going to keep me up,
Yeah.
for a good while, like wondering. Like,
And so that explains what a lot of these Aikido people are talking about. It's like, if you look at Aiki Jiu-Jitsu, you look at the I forgot what it's called in Japanese, but I guess in Chinese it would Ritahang or something. I don't know, but there's a specific school of not Aikido, but Aiki Jiu-Jitsu. So you put the word Aiki together. That was all weapons based or something like that. And I looked up, if you put the Aiki together, even in Chinese definitions, it talks about the weapons school. So it's like, oh, maybe these guys have something there.
which is funny because, again, as a video game obsessed dweeb, one of the characters in Virtua Fighter is her style is described as Aiki Jiu-Jitsu, and I mean it's a lot of it seems like a lot. I mean, you have the Japanese Jiu-Jitsu techniques, but a lot of like Aikido techniques, especially the takedowns and the reactive things. A lot of the counters. So when you try to hit her this way, she'll hit you with this and hit you with the wrist lock. Hit you with the ankle lock, things like that. And here's another thing that one of our affiliate schools or I say our like it's mine, but when the crew that I train with, one of the affiliate schools is in Ireland, and the head coach there is a jiu-jitsu black belt, but also an Aikido black belt, and he's had seminars where he implements the use of Aikido wrist locks for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which I think is like, yeah, that's fascinating. And when I posted I think it was last week, right? The item with that gentleman Rokas, right, from Lithuania, right? Is that where
yes, Ruckus from
Estonia?
I don't remember what his school is called, but now he's called Martial Arts Journey. That's his channel.
No, right. Well, he was, I don't know just what country he was from, but
Oh, Lithuania. Yeah, Lithuania. Yeah.
Okay. So, but someone mentioned in the comments after I posted that like, yeah, they'd seen the application of wrist locks from Aikido in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well, and I'm like, yeah, I'm glad you recognize that, because I've seen that as well, and I'm curious as to why that isn't more common. I'm curious as to why that isn't a bigger deal. I mean, I remember when Boss Rudin and Kenny Rice had the Inside MMA show back on HDNet. One of the viewer questions was, why don't we see Aikido implemented more often in mixed martial arts? And, I mean, the explanation made sense because, you do have a ban in mixed martial arts on small joint manipulation. So that would include fingers and wrists. Just don't see it, but there's other things you could do. I just don't know why, if it were, I guess the main question, I don't know if you want to call it like a philosophical or existential question, but like the main question is like, yo, if this is so good, how come we don't see it here? Like if the Nintendo 64 is the best console ever, how come there's no Final Fantasy or Street Fighter games on it? It makes you think, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's something to it, but I mean, at least in terms of straight grappling, as far as what pertains to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specifically, hey, yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of stuff you could borrow from. And just again, much like the Kung Fu stuff, I don't have a problem with Aikido in practice. I think it's fine. I think if people want to train that, that's beautiful. Just don't try to sell it to me as the most effective thing, because that's where I'm going to have some concerns, questions, and problems. Like I don't think that it's the idea that you're going to tell an everyman this is how you defend against the knife. I think there's you need to have a lot of care. You need to have you really need to be careful. I would feel so immensely guilty and horrible. And again, there's that Catholic upbringing again. I would feel so fucking horrible if I found out that I'm teaching somebody how to defend against like a knife or something and they end up getting stabbed. Like, maybe they might have not done the technique correctly. I'm still going to feel primarily responsible. I taught them that, and maybe they shouldn't have been in that situation to begin with. But look, I've always told people that if you maybe this is not completely related to this, but if you go into a martial arts school, and I always tell like parents that are thinking to get their kids into schools and stuff, if you go in there and the first thing that comes out of the instructor's mouth is not the words run at any given chance, you need to pack up your shit and get out. Get the fuck out right there, because that is not, oh no, easy. You can overcome that easy with this. Like, no, sometimes you got to cut your loss, get the fuck, just leave, man, leave. And yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, maybe I think that's preferable to some of the stuff that and this isn't to pick on Aikido, but just like schools in general that try to teach a lot of this stuff and say, no, this is the superior self-defense format. I don't know, Jack. I don't know. It's just suspect to me.
Yeah. Talking to you, this conversation, I think is actually literally, this is helping me frame the next video, because I also have footage of a jiu-jitsu black belt applying Tai Chi push hands into his warm-ups.
Oh man,
so
great.
It made me think about, because what my friend and I were doing, at first he wanted to show me some Aikido training that would help against striking, but in the middle of it, we didn't film this because I told him, look, I'm going slow motion and you're going full speed to do an Aikido technique on me. No matter what, that just doesn't seem applicable. And he agreed with me. So we took Ruckus's video, especially that first one, the first time he tested that Aikido where he got manhandled. And we thought about moments that we could think about how Aikido could have been applied. So what originally I planned this video to be was, how do you train this Aikido feeling in a more practical combat sports type of scenario? So a little spoiler, just a regular pummeling or kind of wrestling type of position. We thought about, okay, how can you potentially feel an Aikido type of emotion there? So instead of like the attacker going, oh, and then, he gets, and none of that. We're like, okay, you're already in this type of wrestling clinch, because what prompted this was my Aikido friend was down with that jiu-jitsu black belt that teaches Tai Chi push hands, and they were just doing regular jiu-jitsu rolling, and there was a moment he did an Aikido thing, and the jiu-jitsu black belt was like, whoa, I didn't know what you just did there. So I was like, how do you replicate that feeling, but in like, they were actually kind of sparring? So I realized with this kind of what we're talking about, I can actually show how that jiu-jitsu black belt incorporated kind of Tai Chi little principles, at least in the warm-up. It was really cool. So this video might become like a really long 40-minute video, which is awesome. Like, I'd rather make longer, in-depth videos than shorter kind of videos. But yeah, basically what I'm getting at is, I think training methodology is really important. If
Yeah.
you're in a jiu-jitsu rolling environment and then you test out Aikido wrist locks, you're going to be able to see which ones work and which ones don't, right? And that's
As
what we get in
someone,
jiu-jitsu. We see a lot of jiu-jitsu guys start implementing wrist locks because in that type of environment, then you test it out, you test the Nikio or the Ikkyo, etc. Yes, some are probably going to work in the right circumstances. And it's the same thing. I think you try to apply certain Aikido in judo or wrestling, you're probably going to get some of it working. But again, 99% of Aikido schools train with the I come at you, you get thrown type of thing.
look at how many fights just in mixed martial arts alone. Like we saw Mark Hunt get knocked out by Melvin Manhoff way back in the day because Mark Hunt ran at him across the ring and he just boom, because the momentum that he carried with that is going to add to the impact that you're absorbing. And there's only so much of that force you can really take. Fabricio Verdum, he lost his heavyweight belt against Stipe Miocic. Same way, running after the guy, big hooks, and Stipe, boom, box him. It just happens right there because you're carrying that weight. And the other thing that upsets me when I see some of these demonstrations, I don't know. I know the channel is still there. I don't know if the video is still there. It's Expert Village. You're familiar with them, right? They'd have the.
I love them. They got some good stuff, some really bad stuff.
You want to learn how to change the oil on an old Chevy? They got you covered. You want to learn how to be a ninja, buddy? Let me tell you something. You're gonna see some. They had a thing. There's a video, and I got to find that one too. This guy is teaching a ninjutsu technique in which he's defending against punches, and the punches that his training partner, who is noticeably far less experienced than perhaps she should be for an instructional, is like this. She's punching like this. Now, I don't know how many people you know who punch like this. Okay, like pull the elbow back and do this. No, that is not a thing that happens in the wild. I promise you. And so he demonstrates the technique, how to prevent that, right? How to parry and how to like counter. And then he says, all right, so now we're going to do this full speed. And as soon as she throws the first one, he goes, slow. The word slow comes out of his mouth. And you're like, buddy, you just torpedoed your own shit. I'm supposed to be impressed. What's the takeaway? What are you teaching, bro? You're charging people good money that they work for. And you teaching them this? It's a disservice to the community, my guy. I mean, not only are you teaching an ineffective thing, you're controlling the environment in a manner that's not realistic. And then on top of that, it's to defend a strike that nobody throws. What was the purpose? Does this need to exist? No, it does not. But that's the way of the world, man.
Yeah. And that's why when we were filming yesterday, originally I wanted to feature this new thing my friend was trying to test out with how do you train Aikido with strikes. But eventually I just told him, like, it's not going to look good on camera. It doesn't look good in my eyes. Because again, I'm going slow motion. He's at least twice the speed coming at me. And then when he tested on me, again, if he went a little quicker, I would have gotten into panic type of grappling mode. So I couldn't do the Aikido. So no matter what, even if I train 20 years of this, the problem is the punch is still coming too quickly for you to try to apply this Aikido at that speed. So at least with that experimentation yesterday, I was like, I can't film this. I don't think we're going to be able to use Aikido in this circumstance when a full-fledged punch is coming. You're going to have to use boxing or jiu-jitsu. You're not going to use Aikido.
You got to at least hug the guy to close the distance. Yeah. I mean, you can't generate. I mean, that's the main principle of grappling, right? Like, it's hard for you to hit someone full speed when you're not giving them the momentum, you're not giving them the space.
Yeah.
Right? So close quarters, how do they generate that? It's very difficult. And then you tie up the arm. Now they can't hit you. Yeah. Now you're controlling the head. Maybe you do a trip. You know, it branches out from there, but it starts from a very simple set of root principles that really anyone can learn, apply, and understand. But the thing is, like, also, like whenever we've discussed the rise of Ronda Rousey's success, right? It's like, you know, everyone's been hit in the head at least once, whether on purpose or by accident. Everyone knows what it's like to go dunk. You know, maybe you're walking somewhere, somebody turns around with their, you know, arm like this, and you know, get hit. Like, everyone's at least mistakenly been hit in the head. It always happens. Yeah. Not too many people know what it's like to have their arm hyperextended. Okay, and the fact that, you know, then, you know, we just branch out of the conversation, like the fact that Ronda Rousey was able to do it so effectively, so quickly, and to make it look so brutal, you know, that was sort of an aberration of sorts, right? And I think that's just the thing with again, live action sparring, realistic situations. I don't, and then there is the thing about Aikido is not as traditional a martial art as say karate or judo. It hasn't been around as long, although judo in its current form hasn't been around super long either. I mean, this goes back to maybe perhaps the 18th century, if I'm remembering correctly. Karate has had reforms in many ways, and this is before the split between Shotokan and Kyokushin. Again, all of these things have evolved in ways that we don't notice and that we may not immediately recognize. But I don't know. I don't know how you fix that. I don't know how you change that without compromising perhaps the base level of integrity of the techniques that are taught and the philosophy that comes with it. I just don't. That's not. But then again, I'm relieved. That's not a question for me to think about and answer because I'm not an Aikido guy. You know what I mean? Like I'm not teaching the shit. I'm not making any money off it. I'm not doing it. Like that's a they problem, not a me problem. So, it's all you can hope for is that they, find a solution that is for the best and not something that makes things progressively worse.
Exactly. And the guy I told you about, the guy with the black belt in jiu-jitsu who's into Tai Chi, they're actually trying to put together a Tai Chi push hands tournament in America. And basically anyone's invited. So the rules will be explained probably during the tournament, but basically almost anything goes. Of course, there's certain Tai Chi rules, right? You can't really grab at the legs and you can't grab from here up. So no guillotines and stuff like that. But like anything arm or upper body they could do. So their hope is they want to encourage wrestlers, judokas, jiu-jitsu people all to see how well they do under a sort of hybrid style fixed step Tai Chi rules. So that's something really interesting to look forward to. And I like it because it'll bring the Tai Chi art forward, but also I think it'll give judokas and Tai Chi people some things to think about. So yeah, there's a lot of cool things to look forward to.
I want to see that. I really do, because I feel like that more so than the Aikido wrist lock thing. Like I have personally, I have a thing where like I kind of feel like a bit of tightness in my joints, especially with the colder weather this time of year. I feel like maybe that might help with not just my my sort of joints and everything with that, but I feel like maybe that might when it comes to things like framing, I feel like maybe when it comes to things like separating while you're trying to pass guard, maybe there's some, like, now you've got me thinking about how this can branch out. I'd love to see where you take this. I want to see how that dude what he does with the Tai Chi pushing and stuff, because that seems really cool.
Yeah. There's so many things, and again, I can connect you with some of these people, but there's a Wing Chun guy I know who is also a jiu-jitsu brown belt, and he swears on it that the Wing Chun helped his jiu-jitsu hand fighting skills, especially when he's trying to find entries to frame and stuff like that. Exactly. So again, I think it just, half of it is just training method. There's a lot of good stuff in a lot of these systems. It's just unfortunately, whether ego or mistranslation, passing on, a lot of it just got lost. And again, I say this, but also with a grain of salt. Don't just trust anything you see on TikTok or Instagram about, oh, you see, this was designed for this weapon. Just be careful of all those misinterpretations too.
He's like, is that a 12th century halberd, motherfucker? You get that on Amazon? Like,
yeah.
You start trying to, I can trade one of those. You order one on Wish. It turns out a lopsided, the head falls off.
Oh my goodness.
I can see that. I can see that happening, man.
Yeah. So, my last question for you, and I'll just open up for any topic you want to talk about afterwards, but my last question for you, what's next for Bloody Elbow? Any new series coming up? Like Bloody Elbow just kind of came on the map one day. It was like 2013 I started reading Bloody Elbow, but what's next for it? Where do you guys go from there? And I guess you guys are part of a big network of publications, right? So what is next for you guys?
All right, so a bit of an explainer on that. We are under the Vox Media umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not exactly, I mean, even with my time being there, I'm not entirely sure how that really works, because we're kind of like allowed to do our own thing, even though we're using their attack and they're hosting all that stuff. But we're not really. Yeah, we do have like affiliate sites like MMA Mania, MMA Fighting. They do their own thing. They have their own budgets, their own operations, their own contributors, things like that. Oftentimes we do collaborate a bit with the guys from Mania. Not so much with the guys with Fighting, but every once in a while, stuff like that happens. And it's just what it is. But as far as like what's next, that's really hard to predict, because a lot of, like, for example, what the WTF thing. that just kind of came out of nowhere. That just kind of like, accidental brainstorming. And we're like, yeah, let's do that. Let's go with that. Let's make that like a weekly feature thing. And then it just became what it was. Like I used to do the weekend breakdowns or it was more like weekend previews for the international mixed martial arts scene, right? Like, okay, these are fighters you recognize, these are fighters to look out for, and they're all fighting this weekend here, 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 here. And actually, after about a month or two of doing that, somebody was like, oh, it'd be really nice if we had links to see where to find. I was like, yeah, I can find that. Sure. This is going to be on YouTube. This is going to be on Fight TV. It's going to be on, DAZN or Fight Pass. And so I'd link to that as well. And that was cool. But, it became a lot more stressful and a lot more time consuming. My schedule didn't really allow for me to continue doing that. I do kind of miss doing it because there's a lot of shows, especially out of Asia and Eastern Europe, that I think are of some note. I think it would be cool to really show some of that. Um, I mostly do the previews now for the secondary, tertiary events, things like, for example, Bellator, KSW, Invicta, Ryzen, uh, shows that are amazing and have a lot of great talent. Shows that are certainly, if you're a real, more dedicated fan of not just the UFC, that's kind of where I mean, this is how I started. Was I started in the basement. I was just a lowly commentator, and then there was an opening for being a moderator. I ended up doing that. I offered to help out doing previews for World Series of Fighting way back in 2014, and I started doing that. And then I got a straight gig, doing stuff in writing. And between that and the video previews, which we don't do those anymore because we had to shift towards podcasting and integrating all that in our little podcast network. And so now I'm a host of the Level Change podcast, which drops every Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern. Sometimes I'll step in for some of the other stuff if there's like one of the retros that we do, looking at events of the past with an eye of the present. And but so we're always kind of like coming up with stuff. How long it lasts really depends on a lot. The reason I stopped doing those previews, like I said, it was just like it was so much. But I don't know. I don't really look at the readership numbers or anything like that. I don't know how successful it truly was or anything. I think it was healthy to have, but I kind of had to give it some time. And the fact that if you start doing this on a Thursday and then a fight falls apart here, there, and there, and there, it's like it's a lot. It's almost too much to keep up with at once for someone doing it. So yeah, I think it was just like a lot of that. And also I did kind of feel like there was a bit of not so much a conflict of interest. I'm not even sure how to explain it, but I started doing that coverage of one championship. And that, it not like that brought a lot of heat, but it didn't really feel fair to be out here um, doing previews and stuff for an organization that I'm covering from a much more critical angle for stuff outside of fighting. That kind of is like when I started feeling that. I mean, that feeling faded after a while, but I was like, yeah, you know what? I might bring that back. I don't really know. But as far as what's next for me personally, I don't know, dude. I mean, I got a couple of things I'm juggling right now. I'm still working on some other more long-term projects and stuff, but which actually you should be seeing some of relatively soon. As far as the site in general, well, I mean, we go where the wind takes us. We go where we're grabbing on to the top of the car like Batman and seeing where the hell this thing goes. And it's coverage, for example, during the pandemic. We saw how coverage had shifted and changed. Um, Coverage of drug use or crimes committed by fighters. Like we're always going to be on top of that. And I like that the fact that what drew me to the site to begin with was the independent spirit of like, listen, we're not going to stop covering bad things that an organization does because we're trying to get access or credentials. Like we're just going to tell this is a thing that's happening whether you like it or not. This is a reality, and you're going to have to deal with that because these people in the sport are not good. And but there are great people in the sport, sure, but a lot of the ugliness needs to be exposed for things to get better. And that's a thing that a lot of people don't want to accept. We got a guy in the Facebook DMs who just will not stop messaging us with his "Let's Go Brandon" stuff because he thinks that somehow we love Joe Biden. Because we've been critical of certain things that have to do with politics and political views. But that's because for a lot of people, live in a world where they have the luxury of not having to pay attention to certain things that affect all of us on a grander scale. And certainly I personally have my biases, but like Pendulette says, we at least try hard as fuck to be fair. Um, that's I think something that a lot of our readers still appreciate, and we always thank them for sticking with us. And it's fine. Look, if you like us, fine. If you know, fine. I understand we can be an acquired taste. I just know that I'm super fortunate to be, a guy who ended up writing for his favorite website on the planet somehow through some stupid luck and perseverance, and now I'm here, and I'm talking to people that I've actually had the good fortune of training with people that I've looked up to, and talking to people, talking to you. I mean, this is great. I'm happy that we're able, people who are looking at martial arts from a different perspective, because of the fact that we have had an exposure on a different level to some of these other things, and trying to suss out what works and what doesn't is not a very cut and dry thing. There's so many other things that fall into that people don't see, and a lot of the reasoning behind it, a lot of the roots as to why. And I'm glad that we're doing that, man. Again, I know I'm keeping a lot of praise on you, but I really do want to make sure that I make that clear. I'm super happy that we've had this opportunity and time to make that happen.
Awesome, Victor. And the pleasure's totally mine too. And I really appreciate everything. And I mean, Bloody Elbow has just been. There's two sides when I just think of martial arts, right? Yes, there's like Kung Fu magazine and Black Belt magazine, etc. But I always tell people Jiu-Jitsu Times and Bloody Elbow. Those are the two I always tell people. Just because those were the ones that I gravitate towards. They seem to have a clear mind. Like you said, weren't promoting random bullshito, which a lot of those magazines back in the day always had. I remember what you were talking about, like, selling products to help you hone your chi and all this weird stuff. Or there was a Tai Chi master interviewed where he's like, yeah, I'm using my Tai Chi, and they were pictures, because it's a magazine, right? There's pictures of him. Oh, I would be able to use Tai Chi and throw two people who grab my arm. And even as a little kid, I'm like, I don't think you can do that.
You remember the pendants that they would sell?
Yes.
They would sell the three giant thing, and then there was the bracelets and stuff. And I think it was about a year and a half ago, I saw an ad on YouTube. And I just, for some reason, sometimes when I see an ad that's so ridiculous, I'm like, no, let it run. Hold on. I want to see where this is going. And this dude was talking about these Chinese bracelets. He was unemployed and he was broke, and his parents were about to disown him, and he was going through so much bad luck, but he found that bracelet, and they started turning around. He starts talking and talking. The great thing is when someone's just a really bad liar, and you just let him keep talking, and you're like, and I'm just rubbing my hands like a mosquito, yeah, motherfucker, let's go. It's just the biggest crock of shit. It was just I can't believe it was entertaining to a degree. And this is the kind of stuff that they were selling back then. And the fact that it's still being sold now, this is something like a set of roaches that should have been stomped out ages ago. But no, these con men are still out here thriving like Peter Popoff. It's insane.
Exactly. Victor, I think we should do something like this every month or every 2 months, whatever your schedule's like. This is fun. I'd totally be down. And in the future, if you guys need someone to fill a podcast episode or something, I'll totally be down. But seriously, I enjoyed this so much. I would love to do this with you, just whether on Fight Commentary Chats or maybe even have you guest on Fight Commentary Breakdowns. We'll have a little segment. We'll look at Bullshito together or something like that. So, dude, I extend a sincere invite, whether you just as a returning guest once in a while or just, whenever you want. This is so cool.
Jerry, the way this whole thing has gone, I can't say no to that, right?
Mm-hmm,
I cannot. My heart won't let me, because this is. I know it would be great, so I'm more than glad to accept, man. Absolutely,
awesome.
No problem.
Perfect. Yeah. So I think two things I can think of right now, besides bringing you back for a follow-up interview, especially let's say in a month, a lot of cool things will happen, right? So in a month we can do another interview, but in maybe some things I'll do in the future when you have time is if I'm working on something, I could send you what I have already, and just kind of, if you want to send a response, and I can put it at the end and put it in the middle, be like, oh, by the way, this is what MMA reporter Victor says about this. And then, so we'll have a cut to the expert segment. That's something I've wanted to do for a while. I used to work in news when I was in Philly. The reason I was in Philly, I worked at the Fox 29 news station. So I like when you cut to an expert. It's it gives it a cool thing, because people's attention spans, even not even TikTok generation, boomers, whatever. Sometimes you don't want to listen to something for 3 minutes. You want to hear some other view and cut back to that person. So So you could be one of the expert segments. And then, I have some doctors that I want to cut, like when I need professional medical advice for, whatever, cut to the doctor. So like this could be a thing. Like this could, I'm pitching on like what I'm thinking the channel's going to go, because other channels, I mean, we have like 20 channels that do the same thing, right? There's like that's why we have a good ecosystem. But how do I take this smart brain in here and kind of like apply it to more, right? That's where I'm trying to go.
You find a dumb guy with a great vocabulary, and you find me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, guys, this was Fight Commentary Chats, Fight Commentary Breakdowns. This was Victor Rodriguez. And, of course, I will link both Bloody Elbow's website and their YouTube channel with the podcast and all the other stuff they do. So you guys go follow them.